I still remember the heat of Malabo, thick and unforgiving, clinging to your skin like regret. The summer I started my internship at a rising telecommunication institution, I was full of ambition, naivety, and illusions about love. I was 23, fresh out of university in Yaoundé, and I thought I knew everything. Thomas, my boyfriend at the time, was sweet in a slow-burning way. The kind of man who brought me homemade food in recycled containers and quoted Maya Angelou when I was anxious. He was stable. He loved me. And for a long time, I thought that would be enough. But then came Bessa. He wasn't anyone then. Just a quiet, sharply dressed systems analyst who had the corner office that nobody dared enter. Rumors floated around the building he had a past in finance, he'd worked with some shadowy agencies, he spoke fluent French. But to me, he was just another name on the internal chat network in Gonga. It started with a joke about outdated software. I was cursing at a network glitch, and he slid into my DMs with, "Maybe the system's just scared of you." I laughed, replied. We messaged all day. Our conversations drifted from tech to music, to our childhoods in different parts of the country. He told me about growing up near Bata, about the silence of mangrove swamps, about watching his father get arrested during an audit gone wrong. There was a darkness in him, something tightly coiled, but there was also a strange kindness, a knowing kind of tenderness that made me feel seen in a way Thomas never quite managed. At first, I told myself it was harmless. Thomas and I were long distance now. He had taken a job in mainland Equatorial Guinea. I only saw him every other weekend. I thought I could split my heart like a schedule, pencil Bessa into the margins of my work week and leave the weekends to Thomas. But feelings are like signal interference, you never really see them until they start corrupting everything. One night, the company threw a networking party on the rooftop. There was wine, music, and that wet heat that made the city shimmer. I wore a white dress that clung to me in all the right places. Thomas was supposed to come, but he got delayed. Again. Bessa arrived late. He didn't say much. Just stood beside me as I watched the city lights. Then he said, "You look like a problem I'm willing to solve." And just like that, I kissed him. It was electric. Wrong. Addictive. For weeks after, we snuck around cafes in the old quarter, dim corners of the data center, even once in his old Mercedes, parked under a jacaranda tree. I knew I was being reckless, but I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. He told me about his dreams, about fighting corruption from within. He said he was being vetted for something big, something in the financial watchdog agency. I didn't believe him at first. He was just too quiet, too calm. Then one morning, he vanished. No calls. No messages. He left the company. No one knew where. Whispers said he was in government custody, that he'd gotten involved in a financial leak. My heart stopped. Had I been a part of something bigger? Had I just been a game to him? A month later, I saw him on TV. Bessa in Gonga, newly appointed director of the National Financial Investigation Agency. He stood beside ministers and generals, his face carved in stone. He didn't smile. He didn't blink. It was like the man I knew had been erased, overwritten by something colder. Thomas found out not long after. A text message I forgot to delete. The silence that followed was worse than a scream. I've never seen Bessa again. I don't know if he ever thinks of me or if I was just a distraction on his way to power. But sometimes, when I walk by the old telecom building or hear a phone buzz in a quiet room, I remember the taste of red wine, the heat of his hands, and the guilt that never really faded. Thomas never forgave me. And I never fully forgave myself. But in some twisted way, I think Bessa did exactly what he said he would. He solved the problem. Just not in the way I ever expected. After 7 months passed, I had buried him in my mind, like a virus wiped from a corrupted drive. My internship ended. Thomas and I never spoke again. I threw myself into small freelance gigs translating telecom specs, running security audits, anything to keep me from feeling. But in Malabo, secrets don't stay buried. They linger in hallways, in glances, in the glint of tinted windows on black SUVs. It was a rainy Thursday when I saw him again. I was attending a tech conference at the Sofitel Sepopo. I wasn't supposed to be there. A friend had bailed last minute and handed me her badge. I wore a navy blue jumpsuit, tied my hair back like I meant business. I didn't know he would be giving the keynote. Director of the National Financial Investigation Agency, the host said, voice echoing of the marble pillars. Bessa Ingonga. He stepped onto the stage with the silence of a storm. Slim, sharper now, dressed in black. The room applauded. I didn't breathe. His voice was colder than I remembered. Focused. But when his eyes scanned the room just briefly, they stopped on me. A flicker. That was all. Then he turned back to his speech. I should leave, I told myself. But I didn't. I was gathering my things afterward when I felt a familiar presence at my back. You still wear white too much, he said softly. I turned. He looked older. But his eyes, those unreadable, bronze-flecked eyes, hadn't changed. You disappeared, I said, not bothering to sound polite. I had to, he replied. Things were delicate. Is that what I was? I snapped. Delicate? No, he said. You were dangerous. That night, I went with him. I wish I could say I resisted, that I demanded answers or closure. But I didn't. I followed him into a waiting car that glided past checkpoints like royalty. We drove through the jungle-lined coast until we reached a villa outside Beni Modern, steel and glass, hidden by thick trees and silence. Inside, everything was cold. Polished floors, framed economic reports, liquor untouched on a bar cart. But when he pulled me close, it felt like fire. He kissed me without words, without apology. 7 months of absence collapsed in seconds. I tasted ambition and guilt on his lips. He held me like a man who had power but still feared losing control. We didn't speak as he undressed me. Not when we moved to the bedroom. Not when he whispered my name like a confession. Only later, tangled in silk sheets, did I ask, "Why did you bring me here?" He stared at the ceiling for a long time. Because everyone in my life wants something from me. But you already took something. And I let you. It wasn't love. Not exactly. It was need, nostalgia, the ache of unfinished things. That night, we made a truce with our past. Not forgiveness, just understanding. I stayed the weekend. We talked about our lives like strangers in a storm shelter, brief, honest, dangerous. I learned he had enemies in every ministry. That corruption wasn't just a word on a report, it was in contracts, in families, in blood. He didn't ask what I'd been doing. He didn't mention Thomas. When I left on Sunday night, he walked me to the car but didn't kiss me goodbye. Be careful, he said. You're the only thing I can't audit. Before the silence, before the villa, before he became a man too powerful to touch me in public, there were the forest. It started one humid afternoon, after a security conference in Bata. Bessa had asked if I wanted to see something real. I thought he meant a market, or maybe some old colonial fort. Instead, we drove inland past checkpoints, past shantytowns and oil rigs until the road became dust and trees swallowed the sky. He parked beneath a canopy of flame trees. The air smelled of damp earth and orchids. There was no path. He walked like he knew where he was going, glancing back just once to make sure I followed. And I always followed. He didn't say anything when we reached the clearing. Just pulled me close, pressed his forehead to mine. This place doesn't exist on any map, he murmured. That's why I like it. Then he kissed me. Not like a man in love. Like a man trying to forget who he was. He would bring me there on Thursdays, sometimes Sundays. Sometimes he'd arrive late, out of breath, shirt damp with sweat, but always with something in his hands, packages wrapped in thin brown paper. Once, a pair of navy trousers with a brass side zip. Another time, a delicate white bra with threadwork like vines. I saw them and thought of you, he said once, his voice almost shy. They were always my size. He never asked. Never needed to. In the forest, we didn't talk about ministries or audits or the rumors swirling around his name. We didn't talk about the disappearances, the bank accounts in Geneva, or the whispers about foreign surveillance. There, it was only Bessa. And I was just me. Wanting. Dangerous. Free. Sometimes I wonder if he created that space just for us, something untouched, where we could pretend we were something other than weapons dressed as people. But even the forest has eyes. And secrets, like vines, always crawl toward the sun. I used to tell myself it was the thrill. The risk, the rush, the pulse in my throat every time we met in places no one else dared go. Behind the telecom tower in Riaba, beneath the stands at the old stadium in Malabo, once even in the abandoned customs office at the port, while rain pounded the roof like a warning. But it wasn't just the thrill. It was the silence he carried. Bessa never begged. Never promised. He didn't spin fairy tales about leaving his wife, or building a life together in the open. That's what made it worse. He didn't insult my intelligence. He gave me nothing I could hold on to except the fire in his touch, the honesty in his restraint. He was married, yes. I knew. Everyone did. She was beautiful, diplomatic, devout. A quiet presence at state dinners. But she never looked at him the way I did, not like he was a man, but like he was a paradox. We never spoke her name. I wasn't proud of what we were. I didn't need to be. In hidden places, where no one else could see us, he stopped being the Auditor General, and I stopped being a shadow of my better self. Kissing him felt like reclaiming something I had lost long before he came into my life. Control, maybe. Or clarity. I liked it because no one owned those moments but us. And because I knew, when he pulled me into a dark corner and kissed me like the world was burning behind his eyes, that he was running from something too. We were both fugitives in our own ways. I never wanted him to leave her for me. I just wanted him to remember what it felt like when he didn't belong to anyone. People like to believe that falling is sudden. It's not. It's a series of permissions you give yourself. Quiet, invisible traits. The first thing I gave up was time canceling a consulting call to meet Bessa at a safe house in Sampoka. Then came the conferences I skipped, the interviews I declined, the emails I left unanswered because he needed me just for a few hours. He never asked me to stop working. That was the worst part. He didn't have to. I sold pieces of myself without being offered anything in return. At first, I told myself it was temporary. That I'd catch up on the freelance contracts, that I could always say no next time. But soon I stopped bidding for projects. Turned down a UN fellowship I'd once dreamed of. I even ghosted a recruiter from Lisbon who offered me a full-time role, safe, clean, salaried. For weekends spent in silence. For bruises hidden under scarves. For the way he'd look at me after we were done as if I were something he wanted to forget but couldn't. Bessa never promised me a future. And still, I built my days around him like he might one day hand me one. People think betrayal happens in hotel rooms or under silk sheets. But mine happened slowly. In email drafts I never sent. In resumes I never updated. In the steady erosion of ambition I once guarded like currency. I watched my career thin out like smoke, and I let it happen. Not because I was in love but because I mistook intensity for purpose. And when I realized it, it was already too late. My name no longer held weight in the circles I once fought to enter. My work dried up. My inbox went quiet. I had become a whisper in a world that once listened. All I had left was him, and even that was never mine. Bessa was a womanizing. It started with a laugh. We were at a diplomatic gala in Malabo, a rare occasion where I had a legitimate reason to be in the same room as Bessa. I was there as a cybersecurity advisor, wearing a borrowed dress and a name tag that felt like armor. He arrived late, as always flanked by aides, wearing indifference like a second skin. I told myself I wouldn't watch him. I told myself I didn't care. And then she appeared. Young, bold, with perfect posture and a neckline that dared the room not to look. She was the new attaché from Côte d'Ivoire, freshly appointed, all teeth and charm. She greeted Bessa with a kiss on both cheeks, then whispered something that made him laugh. Not the careful, clipped smile he gave ministers or the practiced chuckle for cameras, but a sound I had only heard in the forest, in the dark, when he was wrapped around me like a storm. I felt it like a slap. He hadn't even glanced at me. Over the next weeks, I watched it unfold in pieces. She started appearing at the same events. They left in the same cars. I once saw her slip a hand under his jacket as they stood near a fountain, her fingers resting just above his belt. It was calculated. She knew I was watching. And the worst part, he let her. He didn't hide it. Didn't flinch. Just gave her that same unreadable gaze he once gave me, as if she, too, was something dangerous worth the risk. Jealousy crept in like rot. Quiet, then total. I started checking his schedule. Asking old colleagues about meetings I had no business knowing. I hacked into an encrypted folder on his agency's cloud. Nothing illegal, not exactly, just undetectable. There were no love letters. No compromising photos. Just her name in meeting logs, her presence in travel manifests, her initials in handwritten notes scanned and stored. I began to unravel. Not because I loved him, no. But because I had paid for him. With ambition. With silence. With dignity. And now he was giving her what I never got in the light. It was the first time I realized something terrifying. I hadn't just sold my career. I had auctioned off my self-worth. And someone else was reaping the reward. The end didn't come with a fight. It came with silence. A slow withdrawal. Missed calls. Delayed responses. The last time I saw him, it was raining again like it always did when things changed. He had summoned me to his office, not his villa. A sterile, overlit room with no trace of who he had once been to me. He didn't come around the desk. Didn't touch me. Just gestured to the chair like I was a client. Or was a liability. "There are eyes on you now," he said quietly. "I can't protect you anymore." I laughed. A bitter sound. "You never protected me. You used me. And when you were done, you passed me off like a bad rumor." His eyes flickered, but he didn't deny it. "You crossed lines," he said. "You made noise. People noticed. And now she's the quiet one," I snapped. "The one you can parade around without consequence." He looked down, fingers laced like he was praying. "It's over. You need to leave this behind. Before it gets worse." That was all. No apology. No regret. Just a dismissal. I stood. Walked out without looking back. But it did get worse. 3 days later, my laptop was seized under the pretext of a routine investigation. My freelance contracts vanished overnight. Emails bounced. Calls were ignored. A journalist friend texted me one line before blocking me completely. "They say you leaked internal files." I hadn't. Not yet. But I could have. I still had access to one archive, the one he forgot to wipe. I stared at it for hours, finger hovering over the upload button, wondering if ruining him would bring me peace. It didn't. Because I didn't press it. Because even after everything, I couldn't become what he feared I was. I disappeared instead. Left Malabo under another name. Took odd jobs in Dakar, then Casablanca. Reinvented myself from scratch without ambition, without him, without apology. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, I dream of the forest. Of the place that didn't exist on any map. Of the man who kissed me like he was erasing something. But memory doesn't fade.